So dear participants, welcome to our second webinar that is a part of the US Embassy funded project promoting entrepreneurial lifecycle principles among law practitioners. Lessons learned from the US practice. My name is Ružica Šimić Banović. I'm State Department alumna and Associate Professor at the Faculty of Law, University of Zagreb. One of my favorite duties is mentoring, actually. Hence, I'm very happy that my former students did recognize this topic as vital and that I will hopefully be a better mentor after this webinar. To set the scene, let me mention that in a survey we did at the beginning of this project, we had three key findings. So the first one was the perceived gap between the growing importance of mentoring on one hand, and on the other, it's insufficient availability at all study and employment stages. The second finding we had was another gap, unfortunately, between the Western countries and Croatia, as experienced by our respondents, both related to the mentoring development and overall career support. This tackled their LLM studies, but also their work experience abroad. Thus, in Croatia, we still have a substantial room for improvement, both at the university level and among the employers. And finally, as a way forward, our respondents, mostly young lawyers, feel a pressing need for continuous quality mentoring. Based on their experience so far, they would like it to be more systematic, more coherent, rather than informal from time to time in cases of urgency. We believe Ms. Ide Abbott can help us with the challenges identified. Furthermore, we expect this webinar to have broader resonance not only in Croatia, but in Slovenia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Serbia, and Macedonia as well. Namely, thanks to law schools, Slovenian Bar Association, and USINFO, we have distinguished participants from several countries. At this point, I would like to remind you that the implementation of this project was made possible thanks to the US Embassy in Croatia alumni grants. Ms. Elise, Assistant Public Affairs Officer, would like to welcome you now.
Thanks so much, Ružica, and hello everyone on the screen. I'm sorry that I missed the launch event 2 weeks ago, but I'm really delighted to join you tonight. I know this event has been a long time in the making and it's been really complicated to organize with COVID-19, all the complications. So I really applaud everyone who is involved in the organization and all the participants for your resilience and joining yet another Zoom call. But I've just heard fantastic things about the program and Ida, about your work, and I'm just so pleased that it came together. So I'll keep my remarks pretty short, but I again just want to say how glad we are at the US Embassy to support this kind of project. It's wonderful to talk to such a motivated group of law students, lawyers, and mentors. I'd like to thank our alumna, Professor Ružica Šimić Banović, and her project partners at CEPOR, and also, of course, our US expert, Ide Abbott, for all of your work to make this happen. I understand we have about 150 registered participants from Croatia, Slovenia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Serbia. And we really love seeing these kind of regional programs where people can come together to learn about such a vital topic, because no one country can tackle these things alone. So I think having that regional network just takes it to a whole nother level. We believe that lawyers in Croatia and in the region will really benefit from developing the entrepreneurial skills necessary to launch and expand your own businesses. And I'm thrilled that Ida is joining this event as the expert. I think her background as a consultant, lawyer, published author just makes her an ideal leader for it. And I'm sure that throughout the 2 weeks of this program so far, her advice on strategic career planning and mentoring has enriched all of your perceptions and ideas for the future. We think that current and future entrepreneurs in the field of law have a critical role to play in building dynamic, innovative economies that create opportunities for people across the country. And we have a shared interest in ensuring that our governments and our private sectors are working together to strengthen our shared economic ties. And this is good not just for our workers, our businesses, but also our families and all of our futures. So again, I'd like to thank Ružica and Ida, as well as the whole project team for your work on this project, and all of you who are joining for your interest. I look forward to hearing more about the program. And as I told Ružica and Ide at the beginning, I have a young son who is a little desperate for some mommy time. So I'm going to have to duck off here, but I look forward to hearing much more about the program later. And I really applaud all of you for getting to this point and taking the time to develop your careers as successful lawyers and business people. So thank you so much. And I wish you a wonderful event tonight.
Thank you, Elise. Now, on behalf of CEPOR, Ms. Mirela Alpeza would like to welcome you as well.
Hello. As Ružica said, I would like to greet you all on behalf of CEPOR, SMEs and Entrepreneurship Policy Center that is leading this project. I would like to thank to Professor Ružica, Šimić, Banović, who initiated this project, and US Embassy in Zagreb for supporting it. The objective of this project is twofold. First is to promote entrepreneurial behavior among young lawyers. And second is to talk about challenges experienced lawyers are facing in a mature phase of their law practice. And these two goals are aligned with CEPOR's mission. CEPOR was founded exactly 20 years ago by 10 institutional founders coming from academic community, business associations, development agencies, and entrepreneurial centers. And our mission is to contribute to development of entrepreneurial culture in a society and to contribute to development of institutional and regulatory framework that will be supportive for entrepreneurial activity. In the last decade, CEPOR is especially dedicated to promoting challenges entrepreneurs are facing in different phases in a business life cycle. Indeed, there are various problems and various solutions that entrepreneurs are facing when they start their business, and they are different to those problems and solutions they need in the mature phase or in the phase when they are exiting their business. Today's webinar that will be held by our dear guest speaker, Ms. Ide Abbott, will be dedicated to mentoring, which is a very important topic, especially for mature entrepreneurs and those who are thinking about how to exit or plan to exit their business. In order to support that really challenging process of business exit, CEPOR has established last year a club of senior, mostly retired entrepreneurs who are offering their mentorship pro bono to support their younger colleagues, younger entrepreneurs in this very challenging process. And through this project, we really gained valuable information and experience in mentoring, and we realized how challenging this process really is. So we are very much looking forward to hearing Ide's experience and advice today that we believe is very important to all entrepreneurs, not just lawyers. And we invite you all to contribute with your questions and comments. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mirela. So before our distinguished speaker, Ide Abbott, starts her presentation, let me mention a few organizational details. So we'll have 3 rounds of questions and answers. Please type your questions in the chat box, and Ide will try to answer as many as possible. Ide's approach is very practical, as you may know from the first webinar. Still, feel free to ask for any additional examples or elaboration on any issues raised. Moreover, we'll also produce a publication consisting of the main takeaways of this webinar. So you'll be able to find some answers in the publication as well. For that publication to be useful and hopefully for our future initiatives, we need your feedback. So at the end of this webinar, you'll have a one-click satisfaction survey. And tomorrow you'll get a link for the very short survey. It will take you only 2 to 3 minutes. At the end of the survey, you'll also be able to tick a box and to get your certificate of attendance, as some people have already asked for it. And now, before Ide starts, let me say that Ide was one of the, sorry, just to admit some more people in. Ide was one of the first people to specialize in lawyers' professional development. She has been elected a fellow of both the American Bar Foundation and the College of Law Practice Management. She has more than 4 decades of work experience as a lawyer and as a consultant. The Wall Street Journal selected her book, Retirement by Design, as one of the best retirement books in 2020. She has worked with lawyers, employers, and professional organizations around the globe. I need to say it again. She has been to the Adriatic Sea and would love to visit Croatia again. We also hope to be able to host a live training with Ida soon, yet in this webinar, Ida will also talk about current specifics that appear to stay, such as online mentoring. Ida, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so very much. Thank you for inviting me to do this and for inviting me to return to Croatia, where I have wonderful memories and would love to visit again. So we'll look forward to that. And as we go through this, as Ružica just explained, I won't see the questions in the chat, but she will, and she'll will stop 2 or 3 times during the course of my presentation so that I can address any questions that do come in. I'm excited to talk with you today about mentoring. In the previous session that we did, some of you I know attended, and we talked about mentoring from the perspective of the mentee, the person who has a mentor. We'll talk a little bit about that today, but I'm going to emphasize being a mentor, what it is, why it's important not just to the person you're mentoring, which we call the mentee. It's an awkward word, but for want of a better one, that's what I'll be referring to, mentors and mentees. But I want to just give you a general idea of what we're going to cover. We'll talk about what mentoring is. It has different meanings to different people. And so as we proceed, I want us to all understand the same terminology that I'm using so that if it's unclear, we can clarify. And if you have something else in mind, we can kind of, figure out how to adjust. And then why does it matter? I'll talk about new approaches because the traditional sort of mentoring isn't really what's happening today. The basic principles are the same, but it's taking many new forms. And so I'll tell you a little bit about that. We'll talk about what makes a good mentoring relationship, how to make it successful. I will also address mentoring programs. I know that's something that we have a great deal of in the United States, and there are many kinds of mentoring programs. We'll talk about what you might have. I know there are some in Croatia, but we'll talk about not only how to find them, how to use them, but how to start one if you don't have one and would like to. And then as I think it was Ružica who said, we'll talk about mentoring sort of, as you conclude your career, as you move on to something else. We all live very much longer lives today, and our careers are also longer. And so some people will practice and continue working into their 70s, maybe their 80s. Other people will want to stop in their 50s. And so we're not talking about age. What we're talking about is when you're ready to move out of your current law practice and into something else. So before we go much further, we have some polling questions. And if you could just take a minute, someone going to post those, there we go. Just to get an idea of your experience. Have you ever had a mentor? Have you ever been a mentor? If you would just answer those, take a second. Then we'll go to the next question. Okay, so I'm delighted that a large number of you have both had and been mentors. That's great to know. For those of you who aren't sure, that happens a lot. A lot of times we may have mentors and we don't remember, there's no formal way of identifying mentoring, but looking back on it, looking back at who influenced us, we realized that we may have had a mentor or people have looked to us as mentors. If we could go to the next question, who benefits from mentoring? This is a multiple choice question. And so if we could have the answers.
Ida, can you see the results?
I can see the results for the first two questions.
Oh, but there is also for the third one. If you scroll a bit down, so there's mentees, 92%.
So sorry, that was my mistake. Okay, I didn't realize I had to scroll. Okay, good. So the highest numbers, of course, the mentees benefit the mentors, but I'm glad that a lot of people see that there are benefits that go far beyond just the two people involved or the people who are immediately involved. Thank you. We can stop that now. And great. So I can just close that and we'll continue. Because I do want to emphasize the last point. There are benefits to everybody really when mentoring flourishes. We'll talk about how it benefits mentees in more detail in a moment. And that's what we normally think about as the benefits of mentoring. Somebody who's older and wiser, has more experience teaching and guiding and advising somebody younger who's new in the profession or new in the field and moving them along. But there are benefits to the mentors as well. There are benefits to employers because we know that people may come to a company or a firm because it's of the reputation, because of what they hear. The reason people stay usually has to do with their experience in the place of employment. And that experience depends a great deal on their relationship with the people who supervise them. And most people, when they join a firm, look to their supervisors as mentors. Some supervisors do function as mentors, many of them don't. And so I want people to be aware that if you are supervising other people, they may very well be thinking of you as a mentor. And so you want to be aware of that in your dealings with them in the way you supervise, teach, delegate, give them assignments, give them feedback. It's a way that employers can help retain the talent that they recruit and bring in and train. It helps clients because certainly the more you know about what you're doing, the better your clients are served. And the way you learn about what you're doing is through experience. It's through guidance. It's by somebody serving as a role model, somebody showing you what it means to be a good lawyer, what you need to know, making sure that you are learning what you need to be competent and effective in your job. So clients benefit. And of course, the idea of being a member of a legal profession. A profession is not just a job. We need to be licensed by states, and I'll talk about this a little bit later in discussing programs, because we have, in addition to federal courts, we have a very complicated system in the United States. Some of you may know we have states that license practitioners. We have a federal judiciary, and it's not necessarily separate licensing, but you do need to be admitted to different courts in order to practice. And the legal profession needs to be sure that as we transmit values, as we send young lawyers out to practice, that they reflect well on the profession and they contribute to the profession as well as we want them to, as well as we hope they are and as we hope we are. So there are many, many benefits. And I skipped over kind of the details about mentors because I hope we'll see that as we go along. When you are mentoring someone, you're learning from them. You're learning because they challenge you, because they question, why are you telling me that this is the way to do it? Because they force us to stay current. And the better trained and more we trust the ability and the professionalism of the people we supervise and the people we work with and the people in our firm, the better we can practice, because it frees us up. We aren't worrying as much about the person who's talking to our clients, who's going to court, who's representing us in a transaction. And so the benefits are really quite general and dispersed in many different directions. So let's take a look at, what is it when we talk about mentoring to most young people? What do they look for? They look for all of these things. They want a mentor to give them advice, to train them and teach them what they need to do, to tell them what goals should I be aiming for, what should I be doing to improve my performance through coaching, to assure my success. And this is because we don't have a common definition. And so we all look at this in a lot of different ways. There's no way that one mentor is going to be able to do all of these things for everybody we work with, everybody who wants it. And so what we want is also to have what I see as this working definition. And it has a few words in it that I'd like to emphasize. You can read the definition, but a few things I want to stress. One is that in the older model, this was seen as a top-down. It was a way of transmitting knowledge and values to the younger generation. Today, we recognize it's collaborative. There's a mutual learning process that goes on. It's not just top-down, although usually that's where the emphasis is, because there's someone who has more knowledge, who is there for the purpose of transmitting it to somebody who has less. But it is much more collaborative today than just one directional. It's a process of learning. And that means it is more than just lunch, a one-time event. It is an ongoing process that takes time. And the critical piece here is that it's built on a relationship, so that we have a session for a couple of hours, and I'm talking to you about mentoring, and I hope by the time we leave here that you've learned something and that I've been able to teach and transmit some information to you. But we don't have a personal relationship. We don't have a mentoring relationship. For that, we have to know each other. And so the better I know you, the better I can be a mentor. The better you know me, the better you know how I can help you. And so while I might not be able to teach you and introduce you and give you the best advice and do all the things that you want from me, I can do some of it. And the better you know what I can do, the better I know you and what you need, the better and more productive our relationship can be. And so in the workplace, we focus on professional and career goals, professional development and career goals. I should start, just by way of background, the whole concept of mentoring is an ancient one. And it started in your part of the world more than mine. It started, the first name mentor came from Homer's Odyssey, when Ulysses goes off to fight the Trojan Wars and leaves his son in the care of an older and wiser friend named Mentor. And it's that concept of protecting and teaching and guiding the development that gave us the term mentoring. But the concept started after World War II in large corporations, where companies realized that when new people come in, we're hiring more and more people. In law firms, this started in the 80s, late 80s and early 1990s, as they started to grow, as firms became larger and they brought in more people. How do we make sure that everybody understands what it means to be a good lawyer the way we want you to be a good lawyer? And in order to do that, we needed to take younger people and make sure they had access, exposure, and relationships with the experienced lawyers who could then serve as mentors and do the things that we associated with mentors and mentoring. So the reason I mentioned formal and informal is that when we talk about formal mentoring, usually that takes place within a mentoring program. It's formal because people are matched up. They're given certain guidelines. They can decide by themselves what they're going to do together, but they have some general guidelines and goals for a program. And that's what makes it formal. I know that I am supposed to be your mentee and you are my mentor. Most mentoring happens informally. And it happens as we work together, as we get to know each other. I look at you, I say, oh, wow, look at that. You know, this lawyer really is eager to learn, wants to be successful, likes to support my practice. I'd like to help that person. And so I'm going to make sure that they get the work they need, the experience, the feedback, supervision, that sort of thing. And that's how most of mentoring happens. When it doesn't happen in the normal course of things, mentoring programs are one way of bringing people together. Another, which is much more popular today among young people because we've taught them well, is that they go out and find the mentors they want. They go, if it were Mirela, for example, I would say, Mirela, you are a wonderful negotiator. I'd love to become a better negotiator. Could you mentor me? Could you be my mentor and help me learn how to be better at this? So sometimes it is more formal in the sense that people understand they're playing a part in the relationship. But by and large, when we talk about formal relationship, formal mentoring, we're talking mostly about programs. So what are the functions of a mentor? Most of the time, it is career focused. It's on professional development, helping make sure that you get not just the education, the training, the experience that you need, but some guidance along the way and some networks, connecting with other people, whether it's within the same firm, letting you know who's the expert, this is the person you should talk to about this, or who's the person who can make sure that you get the right work. Or if it's a client, it's getting introductions to clients and making sure that clients understand that my associate is an expert in this and is a brilliant lawyer. And that's why I'm letting the associate work with you on a more frequent basis. And I'll be there, but I want you to develop this relationship, attorney-client relationship with them as well. Sometimes it's broader than that. In order for me to be, if I'm in a larger firm or organization, it might have to do with my advancement, my promotion from a junior role to a more managerial role, to a partner role, or an executive position or something like that. And sometimes it's within the community. It may be that in order to build clients, I need to be well known. I need to be an active member of an industry group, or I need to get speaking engagements. And a mentor is someone who might be able to introduce me to the people who invite me to speak, or they might be able to push me in that direction and give me the guidance I need and the introductions I need to make my way. So that's the primary function, and it's certainly the one we think of the most when we're talking about mentoring in the workplace. There's another important set of functions as well. And this is true everywhere, but it's especially true in a profession where there's a lot of pressure, a lot of stress, and a lot of fear of doing something wrong because the consequences can be quite extreme. When you represent a criminal somebody in a criminal proceeding, the risk is pretty great that you do what you can. If you're not competent or you do make a big mistake, you're talking about their liberty. If it's a commercial transaction, it may be a lot of money. It may be the future of a company or of a small business. There are a lot of risks involved. And for lawyers in particular, we're not known for being thick-skinned. You know, lawyers tend to be pretty sensitive, and they worry more than they should. We're trained to worry. We're trained to see the negatives and to look for issues and weaknesses. And sometimes that takes a toll on us. And so what a mentor can do is help deal with the insecurities and the worries that come with that. Sometimes you make a mistake and all you need is somebody saying, listen, this is not the world's worst mistake. All of us make mistakes like this when we're young. Let me tell you the mistake I made. Let me tell you how I overcame this situation. Or somebody sits there thinking, I don't know if I'm smart enough. What, you know, they call this imposter syndrome. What if people wake up one morning and they realize I'm not as smart as they think I am? There are a lot of insecurities that lawyers face. And knowing that there's somebody you trust who can do a reality check, who you can go to and say, you know, do I really belong in this profession? I worry that I'm not going to be good enough. I'm not smart enough. I don't have the energy or whatever it takes. So we call that psychosocial. I know most lawyers go, oh, don't talk to me about, you know, psychobabble. This is emotional. I don't want to deal with emotions. But we can't really escape it. We all have them. We feel them, and they can interfere with our ability to be successful. But having a mentor, even when you don't have those conversations the way I describe them overtly, knowing that there's somebody who has your back, you know, who will help you if you're in a bind, and who thinks you're good at what you do and thinks you are a good lawyer and will help you. Having that increases your satisfaction at work and your sense of being part of a profession. One of the issues for young lawyers in particular, and this is a reason we have a lot of state bar programs in the United States, which I'll talk about later, is that we often have lawyers going out and starting their own practice. A great many lawyers in the United States and all over the world start their own practices when they finish law school and their training. And they don't have a lot of connections to the community. They wind up making more, and I mean the legal community, they wind up making more mistakes, doing things that get them in trouble or that harm their clients. And having a mentor, that relationship, if even one person, can be helpful so that they have a way to connect with other people and with the larger profession and the community that they belong to. It gives them a sense, whether it's within the profession or within your firm. If you work in a firm and you feel isolated, you tend to make more mistakes because you don't go and ask. You don't make sure that you're doing things right. And so having a mentor to help with that is also critically important and one of the major functions of a mentor. There are two other areas. One is role modeling, and that is simply being somebody to emulate. And some people consider this as a separate part of mentoring. It's an odd thing here because you can be a role model. A good mentor is a good role model, but there are mentors who are not good role models. And you can have good role models who are not mentors. You can have historical figures, someone whose biography you read, or a movie that you see about them and you say, oh, I really admire them. I would like to live my life. I would like to be a lawyer I would like to do things like they do. I like their style. I like their confidence, how they carry themselves. You can do that without knowing the person. Somebody you see in court one day, or you see at a client meeting. A client could be a role model, but they aren't necessarily going to be a mentor because you don't have that kind of relationship. So, I mean, I don't care if you want to consider it part of this, that's great. I'm just saying that there is a distinction there. And you want to make sure that if you are potentially a mentor to somebody, that you want to act in a way that they could also see you as a good role model. And lastly, there are some people who talk about a separate role, a separate function for lawyers because we're part of a profession. And this would be true if you're a business person or in any other field, that if you are professional, if you are in a profession, you have an obligation to transmit the values of what it means to be a professional to the next generation. And so some people would say this is a separate function of being a mentor and making sure that you do transmit those values to ensure the continuation of a profession that makes you proud. So I've just described all sorts of things that a mentor can do. But as I said earlier, one person is unlikely to serve all of those functions and to be able to do that for everybody that they supervise or everybody they work with. And so what we talk about today is having a constellation of mentor, or you may have heard the term a board of personal advisors or a board of mentors. And what that means is simply that young people are being taught today, don't look to just one person for all that you need in terms of your career and professional development and all these other things. You need different people at different points in your career. They all have different strengths. They all have different talents and things you can learn and get from them by getting to know them through different kinds of mentoring relationships. So for those of you who think, who are sitting there thinking, well, there's no way I can do this, it's expecting too much. It really isn't, because it's important for you to recognize, what are my strengths? How can I help someone? What is the best use of my skill and talent and time? And how can I let somebody know that that's the best way to help them? And we'll talk about some of the ways you can do that. But I do want to, I've mentioned this a few times, and I want to go over just to give you an idea how mentoring has changed. In many ways, it hasn't. The basic principles of it being a relationship through which people learn and grow and develop, that really is the heart of it. But today we live in a very different world. And so some things have adapted to meet the modern workplace. So I've already gone through a couple of these things. It can have, and we encourage people to have multiple mentors. The emphasis today is on everybody learning, everybody contributing, because there is something, everybody knows something they can teach us, no matter how smart we are, no matter how much experience, no matter how many years we have. Someone out there has something that they can teach us. Almost everybody does. And the trick is to find out what that is and to be receptive to it. We no longer expect a mentor to be much older and wiser. Sometimes it can be a peer, sometimes it can be somebody much junior to us. And I'll talk about that. We call it reverse mentoring. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. It used to be that the mentor is the person who reached out, usually not by saying, I will be your mentor, but by doing the things that a mentor does, by giving that person key assignments, introducing them to key clients, things like that. Today, mentors, young people can come to you, anybody can come to you and say, I'd like to have, I'd like to look at you as a mentor in this, to help me in this way. It can be at any age, and much of my work today is actually mentoring much more senior partners and lawyers and business people as they leave their careers and move into retirement or new fields or new professions, or start businesses for that matter. For those of you who have an entrepreneurial bent, a lot of people in the United States, most of the new businesses are being started by people over 50, and many of them by people in their 60s and 70s. So what we know today is that having a mentor at any age can be helpful, because we're living longer, healthier lives and staying active and doing things as we get older. It benefits, there's benefits all around. A key point, because in the United States, diversity is a major issue for a lot of different reasons and a lot of different ways that we define diversity. But it used to be that people mentored folks who were like them. And today we know that there is much to be learned from people who are different. If we focus on mentoring as a learning process, if we deal only with people who are like us from the similar background, similar ways of thinking, it limits what we learn, because we're basically, limiting our sphere of knowledge. If we're mentoring people who are different, whether it's by gender, by age, by race, by ethnicity, by country, by training, we have much more we can learn, and we value those differences. We now have mentoring in groups, not just one-on-one. Instead of being lifelong or career long, we know that mentoring can be much more short-term, much more strategic, focused on a specific particular sets of goals. It can be in any field. I have a friend who, when she left a large firm to start a business, to start her own practice, invited several people to be her mentors. And this was her board of mentors. And one of the key people was a salesman, someone who sold life insurance. And she said to him, "I'm not going to sell the way you sell. That's not what I'm doing. I'm not asking you to be my role model." But someone in sales understands how people buy things, how they look, what they look for when they're looking for services and products. I need to get clients to want to hire me. And someone who's in sales may have a better understanding of how I can persuade people to hire me as a lawyer. And so she was looking at a specific set of skills he had, not at the particular kind of work he did. And it made her better as someone who could develop business and bring in clients. It could be, again, she went to people outside a firm, and so it can be in any field, in any place. And of course, we know today, virtual mentoring has been around for quite a while, but we know today, because people have not been able to be face-to-face, that mentoring can definitely take place in person, or through the use of technology from a distance. So I want to talk a little bit about different kinds of mentoring and the different levels, because I want to talk a little bit about sponsorship, which is a different variation of mentoring. And basically, mentors can give you information. Anybody who's been in practice more than you have, or if I've been in a law firm for 6 months, I have a lot more knowledge about the law firm and how things get done than the new person who is just hired. So I can be a mentor to that person, because I can help them learn the things they need to know, because I'm already here. I have that experience, that understanding. There's very little trust that has to be involved, and there's very little risk. If I give you the wrong information, maybe you make a blunder, but it's still at a very low level. There's not much risk involved. If I'm going to give you advice, there are fewer people you're going to trust, because how do you know that the advice I give you is correct or is wise? And there's more risk. How do you know that if I follow your advice, it's going to be good for me and my career? How do I know you don't have if you're my mentor, that you don't have your own agenda? You want me to take this assignment and be an expert because you want me to do all my work for you and to do it your way. What if it's not right for me? There's a different level of risk involved. And that becomes even more true as we move up over time, because what we want ultimately is our mentor to be a champion for us, to say to our clients, this is the best lawyer I know. You want to work with them. To say to the executives or to the partners of the firm, this person should be a partner, or this person should be, in a higher position, should get a promotion or a raise. This person is terrific. I'm going to be an advocate for that person. I'm going to be their champion. In order to be that champion, there's a much bigger risk. As a champion, the risk to me is, what if I've made a mistake? What if you don't live up to what I'm saying? What if you turn out, to be a terrible lawyer for this person? Or if you don't do the things that a mentor or that a partner or an executive should do? That's a risk to me. If I'm the person being championed, being sponsored, what if you've put me in there and the failure to me is just as great. The risk to me is just as great. We have to trust each other. We have to know each other much better and know what to expect from our performance, our values, our attitudes, our work ethic. And so we get fewer and fewer, and ultimately, in order to advance our career, what we're looking for is that champion. We've started in the United States to call, and other places, to call that a sponsor. And I want to distinguish this because people have different expectations when they hear these terms. The emphasis in mentoring, as I've been talking about, is really on professional development. And almost anybody can be a mentor. But a sponsor focuses on the advancement of your career, focuses on getting you moved up, promoted, not just in terms of the firm structure, but promoted as a professional, promoted as a successful lawyer, or as a professor maybe, or as a business person. And in order for me to be a sponsor, I have to have some political power, some influence, so that when I say, Mirela should be a partner, my other partners trust me because they know that I know what I'm talking about. If they don't, if I'm, anybody in the firm without that kind of influence, maybe they'll listen, maybe they won't. But in order to have the kind of power, the kind of, we call it clout, the kind of influence that really gets somebody to go out on a limb and argue and advocate for you, that person really needs to have power, some sort of power, to be effective. And so they have to also know you better and trust your skills and your abilities, because they're taking risks for you. And so it's a greater risk to be a sponsor than a mentor, and fewer people do it. And so people want it, but it becomes, there aren't as many. I also want to mention, and by the way, there is a handout that I think Ružica and Mirela will make available to everybody, that just more goes through this a little bit more about the differences between mentoring, sponsorship, and coaching. In some places, like in England, other UK countries, coaching and mentoring are often not as distinct as they are for us. Coaching can be a business. Many coaches, I know in Croatia and other places as well, we have professional coaches. They are trained in a process. And most of the time, what they're dealing with is, certainly if we're talking about in the workplace, they deal with performance. It might be learning a skill, it might be improving. I have an important argument coming up. I might hire a coach to help me improve my presentation skills or my trial skills. Usually they deal with specific functions and they focus on the results. I want to improve. I want to learn something, or I want to improve. Sometimes, and not sometimes, usually they deal with particular goals. My goal is that I want to be better at time management. I'm too scattered. I need to manage my time better. And so this is the goal that I set. I identify certain areas. I develop a plan and I work toward it. And the coach is there to hold me accountable because they check in with me and they say, how are you doing? Are you following up on your goals? That sort of thing. So one of the things to keep in mind is that sometimes mentors, sponsors, supervisors act as coaches because they do these things. But, and sometimes some organizations have internal coaches. They hire people to serve as coaches to employees or to lawyers. And sometimes you go out and hire coaches. Some of my clients are large firms, and they have programs where they're helping partners, senior partners, start to do succession planning and transition out of practice. They hire me to work to help the individual partners as an outside coach, but they hire me to do that. Most coaches are hired if they're not working for the same company or if they're not a supervisor, but independent coaches get hired. I believe that in the UK, you can hire mentors. But in the United States, usually mentors are not hired, they're not paid. They're people who have experience in the same field that you have. And so, or they have a particular skill that they can help you with based on their experience. So it's a much more specialized focus. A coach may also be an expert in a field, but it's somebody that you hire. So what I'm bringing these things up to just give you some differences, but frankly, the lines are very blurry. They're blurring more and more all the time. And frankly, I'm not a purist. I don't care what you call it. I'm going back to my definition earlier about a collaborative learning process. And if you can help somebody learn and develop and build their confidence and grow as a professional and have a successful career, then we're talking, I will call it mentoring, and you can include all of these or any of these other functions. So I hope that makes it clearer and not more confusing. If it does, if you need more clarification, let me know. So I mentioned a few different models that are developing, we're seeing more of. One is peer mentoring, which has always happened. It's peers helping each other. And we see that even on social media and in intranets within a company where people are sharing information all the time and helping each other. That can be peer mentoring. I'll come back to virtual mentoring in a minute. Group mentoring may be a small group led by one or two mentors. Sometimes it's also, we call it mentoring circles. There's no particular mentor assigned to run the group. Everybody shares, and they may take turns and rotate the responsibility for running the group or leading the discussion. But it's a group of people learning from each other. Reverse mentoring is a hard kind of mentoring program. That's where we're seeing it a lot in the United States. And it's where the junior person serves as the teacher, as the mentor. It started in corporations here around technology, social media, things like that, where junior people were enlisted really to mentor and teach executives and people in management how to use the technologies that, frankly, the younger people knew better and the more senior people didn't know how to use. So that's where it started. It also then became a function of diversity learning because, and the reason sponsorship developed was the same thing. What researchers were discovering was that women were given mentors, but they weren't advancing. They weren't given the same sort of support and advocacy, the active kind of support that I was describing that sponsors gave. Sponsors tended to be senior white men, and they tended to sponsor junior white men and bring them along. And so people realized that we needed to do more to encourage these leaders, the people with power, the white men, to be sponsors for women. And that's also where reverse mentoring happened, because in corporations, women who were about to become at the level where they might become managers and were up for promotion were asked to work with senior executives so that the executives understood the obstacles and the work conditions that women were facing in their careers in this company. We now see reverse mentoring programs that deal with diversity more broadly, so that minority lawyers who belong to minority groups are and women are asked to be mentors to the senior executives and the senior partners who still tend to be dominated, those ranks are dominated by white men. And so diversity is a major focus of reverse mentoring, but there are a lot of ways that reverse mentoring happens, even informally. When you realize that the younger person you're mentoring knows a lot about something that you need to learn about or want to learn about. So when you learn from them, the roles are kind of reversed. But we focus, as I said earlier, on mutual mentoring, mutual learning, so we don't have to worry about these categories. Episodic mentoring is short-term. And there are, I don't know that this is the kind of mentoring most people want, but sometimes it's my calling someone and saying, I need help on this particular problem. Can you help me? And they give you that help. Some people will call that mentoring, even though it's only on a one-time basis. Okay. Virtual mentoring is basically what it sounds like. We're in different places. So the mentoring takes place over the phone, over Zoom, or by texting. It takes place in a lot of ways, but we're not in the same place. It takes place across borders. I one time, maybe 10 years ago, before we even had all the technologies we've had, I got a phone call from someone. I'm in California. I got a phone call from a woman in Australia saying, I'm in a large firm. There's nobody here I can talk to about these issues. Will you be my mentor? And she got my name by Googling lawyers and mentoring. And we wound up, I was so intrigued. I thought she's either, kind of crazy, or she's got a real problem. And I listened to her, and it was an interesting problem. And so we worked together over the phone across the world. So I know it can be done when there's an interest and a will to make it happen. So before we get to this, I'm going to stay here, and I think we have some questions before we move on.
We have some questions that we got in advance. I have some myself, so I'll try to group them. So the last time we mentioned the issue of young lawyers being overconfident, or at least the impression, or not necessarily an objective issue, yet insufficiently competent. So would you be able to give some hints for mentoring them? And what if a mentor perceives that kind of a mismatch?
I didn't hear the second question.
What if a mentor perceives that kind of a mismatch? How he or she could handle it?
Okay. A lot of
overconfidence and insufficient.
I know, people have been complaining about, every generation complains about this. Today it's an industry. And so we read books that tell us this is what happens. Young lawyers are taught that in order to get ahead, they need to be confident. They also grow up with their parents telling them, the same thing. And especially, I don't know if you see it there, we see it all the time, where everybody gets awards, as they go through school. They're all told, because we all want our children to have good self-esteem. We tell them how great they are. And so they come into the workplace and they think they know what they need to know. The fact is that if you approach them in a way that is receptive, if they come to you and they want to learn, then it's easier, because then they initiated it and you can have the conversation. I'm happy to teach you, but you have to realize that you may hear things from me you may not want to hear. I may criticize the things you do. Are you, is that going to be okay? And now let me just say, I'm talking about mentoring. If it's in a supervisory role, if that's all we're talking about, it's a little bit trickier, a little bit different. If we're matched in a program, or if I go to you and I say, I'd like to be your mentor, this is what I'd like to teach you, you have to be able to establish the role. This is my role as a mentor. And I'm going to give you what I see as necessary observations about your performance. I'm going to give you answers to the questions you asked me. But it's okay for you to disagree with me, but we need to discuss it. Okay? So that if you hear something and you think I'm off base, you don't just go out of here angry or tell me, thinking I don't know what I'm talking about. We need to talk about it, because you may see things from a perspective I'm not seeing, and I have a button, actually. I don't know if I have it here, but it's a button, and it's like this, and it says, because we've always done it that way. It has a line through it, kind of not. One of the benefits to being a mentor is realizing that just because we've always done it that way doesn't mean it's the best way. And if you walk into the relationship recognizing that when somebody questions you about it, you have to be able to justify why you're doing it. And if there's a better way of doing it, why not at least listen? If the younger person is telling you something that's stupid, instead of just thinking, well, that's stupid, explain why it won't work. And so it's a matter of both being open, not making a judgment ahead of time, but wanting to understand, why do they think that? And if you feel that they're not competent enough, explaining, before I can trust you completely to do this without such close supervision, you need to be able to show me that you do know. And, I understand you learned this, it's new to you. I've been doing this a long time. I sort of think I know what works and what doesn't work. And this might have worked in school, but I don't think it's going to work when you get into the courtroom or the conference room. So, taking it more than simply getting defensive or getting judgmental, and treating it more as an opportunity for you to try to understand the other person better. This is, I would tell this to a young person too. Just because they're old doesn't mean that they're irrelevant, right? And when you're 25, somebody 45 may look old, but they're right in their prime. And somebody 75 may look old, but they know a lot more than you do and will ever know. And you have plenty to learn, and they may be more savvy than you are about the same thing. So, it's a matter really of the attitude you walk in with. Sometimes if this is somebody who just has a really bad attitude and you're not getting anywhere, you could say, I'm not the best mentor for you, because you're not, you're arguing with everything I say, or you're not listening to anything, and you're not telling me why, So I don't know, does that get to?
I guess so. It's not me asking it. So I guess so. Another issue you mentioned, and it could, I'm glad that you also mentioned that path dependence issue. If you have this intergenerational mentoring, I guess the reverse mentoring and transitional mentoring could be applied at the same time. So would this be a sort of a solution to this issue when there is a mismatch between a mentee and a mentor to offer reverse mentoring as well?
Well, I wouldn't worry about the terms,
Okay.
right? I mean, I put these on here because you might hear them. They're talked about. I wouldn't focus on any category. I would focus on the relationship. And yes, treat it as reverse mentoring. Say, well, why don't you, you seem to be very knowledgeable. Why don't you be the one to teach me? Or I know you're very knowledgeable. I would like to learn more about, this particular thing. Or maybe, this is a new field of law. You just came out of law school and you studied this. I'd love to learn what give me some of your insights. What were the issues that you saw? So this idea of mutuality is what really goes, it's what lies under all of these. It means I can learn and you can learn, and we're doing that together.
Yeah, and maybe to make a sort of a transition to the next part of the webinar, there was a title in the most recent Economist saying, love them or hate them, online meetings are here to stay. So I would say online mentoring is here to stay as well. So if you could provide us with some suggestions on how to make it more productive.
Sure, that's what we're going to get to right now. So what a nice transition. So what makes a relationship successful? And here are a few keys, and it doesn't matter, old, young, all of these labels. First of all, it's always been intergenerational. Think of what I said going back to Homer's time, the classical period. It was always an older person and a younger person. Today, it's less intergenerational because it could be peers, but so what? It's basically the transmission of knowledge and values and generally learning. So the first key is that you really have to have an interest in each other. If you don't care, people know that. If you have children and you don't, they ask you a question and you are doing 12 other things and not paying attention, or you give them an answer that's not genuine, they know it. And so do the people in your workplace and the people you're mentoring in a mentoring relationship with. You can't fake this unless you're a very good actor. And so to make a relationship work, it's any relationship, you have to have a genuine interest in the other person. And some people think, oh, I'm an introvert, I don't like this kind of thing, or, oh, I'm an extrovert, I can't sit still for this sort of thing. Forget it. Everybody has something interesting about them if you spend a little time to find out. I've never met anybody who is so totally boring that there's nothing interesting, nothing they can say or know about a hobby they have, an experience they've had. There's something of interest. Shared purpose, I'm going to go into a little more deeply in a moment. But when you have a common purpose, you both know why you're there, why you're having this relationship. Sometimes it might be simply to have ongoing conversations as one person is progressing. Just, we get together and I tell you about what I'm working on and what I'm experiencing, and you tell me whether that's okay, or you give me some feedback, or, that's fine. It can be loose that way. Sometimes it's a specific goal. And in a program, it usually is a specific goal. Sometimes in the workplace, as we're just working together, it really isn't. We're just learning from each other, and the relationship gets stronger as we get to know each other better and as we learn. The idea of mutuality is a key, because it doesn't make me feel like I'm doing all the work as a mentor. And it doesn't, as a mentee, it doesn't mean I feel like somebody's just lecturing me and not interested in hearing what I have to offer. So we both have to make a commitment, and that includes, a commitment to making the relationship work and to the purpose that we're meeting together for. It also means we respect each other. And this goes to competence, because trust, we know trust in terms of not lying, about following through on promises and that sort of thing. But when we're talking about in a professional workplace, if we work together, we have to trust each other around the work. I have to believe that you're competent to do the work, or if you're still so junior, you have to develop the competence. I have to believe you really are trying. In terms of respect, I have to believe, if I'm the junior person, I have to respect and think that you know what you're talking about. If I think you're a terrible lawyer, I'm not going to respect your advice. I'm not going to really pay much attention, and I'm not going to do much in terms of this relationship. We also have to respect each other's time. And that means, in particular for the junior person, the mentee, has to show up for me. Well, both people. When you make a date, you have to respect the date and show up, not early, not half an hour late or 20 minutes late, or cancel a meeting at the last minute when you could have postponed it earlier. So we have to respect each other on a lot of different levels, and we have to trust each other. Trust is at the heart of every relationship, not just mentoring. And so we need, but it is important here as well. Communication. And again, communication here means dialogue. It means both of us asking questions, listening to the other person, and learning from each other. It does not mean I'm the mentor, I do the talking, you listen, you leave and do what I say. That's the way a lot of mentoring used to happen. We used to think of it that way, but not anymore. It's a mutual sense of communication. Both people are learning from each other, and I hope a matter of enjoyment, because it can be extremely satisfying to have these relationships. Many of them last many years or a lifetime. Sometimes you think about them 20 years later, you think back to the person who influenced your career or who made a difference. And that can be really gratifying as well. I wanted to emphasize the shared purpose, because sometimes it's not very clear, and sometimes it doesn't have to be a particular objective. It does if you're in a program, or if you're matched, or there is a level of formality to the relationship. Because why are we meeting? Why are we getting together? If it's once a month, once a quarter, once a year, whatever it is, why are we doing it? What's the objective? What's going to be different afterwards? How am I going to grow? How am I going to change if I work with you, as a mentor or as a mentee? What will we achieve? These are some of the questions that you can be thinking about, and you can be discussing. It's fine. It's a good idea to discuss this together. And there needs to be a desire to actually make it happen, because talk is cheap, right? We can all sit and talk about these things a lot, but there needs to be a way to make it happen, and a willingness to work to make it happen, because they don't just happen by themselves. Sometimes just the conversation alone can make it happen. Sometimes if I'm angry about something happened at work. I have an assistant, and my assistant won't listen. I can't get my work done. I'm so frustrated. I don't know what to do. And I go to a mentor, and the mentor might be able to sometimes they want me just to listen, right? As a mentor, sometimes they need to vent. And just by doing that, they can come up with their own solution, their own way. And in fact, as a mentor, this is something to keep in mind. You're not there to solve the mentee's problems. You're there to help them learn how to solve their own problems. There's a difference. So it's not a matter of my saying, oh, you're having problems with your assistant, do this. Do A, do B, do C. It's better if I'm a mentor to say, why do you think your assistant is acting that way? What have you done to, to change the dynamic? Is there something you could do to make a difference? Have you tried this? What happened? Could you try something different? What could it be? The idea, it's faster to simply say, do what I tell you to do. But you aren't helping them learn anything. You're helping them to be like you. It might work, it might backfire, it might be terrible. So it's better to help them understand how to solve their own problems, because you're not going to be there to solve their problems all the time. You shouldn't be there to solve their problems, and that's not your job. So sometimes it's a good idea, especially if there are particular goals involved, to have a plan. And another document that I made available that will be made available to you is a very, very basic mentoring plan. And it basically asks you, what are you going to do together? How are you going to, what are the goals we're going to work on? What is each of us going to do? Because each of, maybe my role as a mentor is just to listen and to be available, but maybe I have to actually make an introduction, or I have to find out about whether an assignment, a certain kind of assignment is available. So what are the goals? What are we going to do? What's the time frame? In order to be efficient, you need to be focused. In order to do that, especially as lawyers, we've got, but it's true in any field, you have so many other things happening. They're going to distract you. They're going to take your mind in different directions. You need to have time frame. Many of us work better under a deadline. And certainly if you're that kind of person, this is especially important for you to have a time frame, so that we know that by June 1st, I'm going to make 3 phone calls. And then on May 31st, if I haven't done it, I'm going to do it. So it's a way of holding you accountable, keeping you focused and disciplined. And then in the plan, you can also put in, how often are we going to meet? Excuse me. Are we going to meet by phone? Are we going to meet by Zoom? Are we going to meet once a month, once every 3 months? Are we going to meet the first Wednesday of every month at 9 o'clock? That way you can put it on the calendar. The one thing I would, you asked about making the relationship more productive and efficient. One thing I would do is, and I think this is very important, before you leave a meeting with your mentee or mentor, put the next meeting on the calendar. You can change it if something comes up. If it's not on the calendar, it won't happen. Because that means somebody, you're both very busy. Somebody has to remember to schedule it. If you scheduled it before you leave, it's there. If you have to change it, that's one thing, but at least you don't have to worry about reminding yourself. And then one of the important things in a corporate program, corporations, businesses that have mentoring programs, never match up somebody who reports to their mentor. You would always have at least two or three reporting levels between the mentor and the mentee, because they want the mentee to be able to be open and candid and truthful. And if the mentor supervises them or reviews them or has some sort of influence over their progression, then it's harder for a mentee to be as open and honest about the things bothering them. You also run into the problem of sometimes the problem is the mentor being unreasonable or not showing up or something like that. And if that happens, how do if the mentor and the supervisor are the same person, it's hard for the mentee to bring that up. Or sometimes it's the mentor who finds that the mentee is unresponsive or doesn't listen or something like that. So in a corporate program, you want to separate the two of them in terms of reporting structure. In a law firm, in most law firms, that becomes almost impossible because most mentoring happens really as you work together. And if you bill by the hour, as many lawyers do, it's harder to carve out a lot of time just for mentoring. And so it's easier when people work together. And what that means is that the confidentiality may be compromised. And you may not be able to promise confidentiality the same way. What I encourage, if that's the case, when the mentor and the supervisor are the same, is to have someone available in the firm who can be sort of the person, or 2 or 3 people if it's a large enough firm, so people have a choice. People you can go to when you have something you want to discuss in confidence, but can't discuss it with your mentor because your mentor is too close. It's also a supervisor or somebody you have to talk about. So having some outlet for confidential discussions is a way of getting past the limitation or the constraint when the mentor is the same as the supervisor, because sometimes the confidentiality is a really important element of the relationship. Some communication techniques. I mean, a lot of lawyers are very good at this, but most of the time what happens is a lawyer walks in and says, oh, to the mentee, how's it going? What are you working on? How is everything? And the mentee says, fine, I'm doing this. And that's the end of the conversation. So how do you start a conversation that could go beyond that? One way you can do it is to share stories. What's for a young lawyer to say to somebody, to an experienced lawyer, how did you get your first client? Or, what did you ever have an experience where you felt your client was lying to you? How did you handle it? And I mean, lawyers love talking about their experience. They love especially talking about their successes, right? This was how I won the biggest verdict that's ever been won. This is how I made this deal when people told me I could never do it, or got this client. Having a conversation about your stories, asking the junior lawyer, what kinds of challenges did you face that you're worried about facing here, or that I can help you with? Open-ended questions where a story might come out, where you could use that as a way of discussing what it means to be a lawyer, or how you demonstrate your competence, or how you overcome it when you really don't feel the kind of confidence that you need. Inviting questions, saying to somebody, listen, this is what I'm dealing with. How would you deal with this? I'm puzzled. I have a challenge right now. I'm a senior partner here, and I'm not sure how I should handle this. What do you think? Or invite the junior lawyer with you to a client meeting. They love this. They love seeing the work in action. Let them watch the trial or the hearing. Let them watch the negotiation. Now that it's on Zoom, they can do it easily. But when you're live and in person, what do you love most? I don't know if you're able to do this in your, the way you practice in Croatia. It's a completely different market. I know it's a different framework, and the size of the firms are different. But it's very rare for our lawyers, our young lawyers, to actually get into court, to actually get into the deals and see and experience these things firsthand. But when you can say to somebody, did you notice during that hearing, did you notice how the client reacted, or how that witness reacted? Why do you think they reacted that way? When you're asking for the younger person's advice or for their insights, you're learning how they think, They're learning because they have to think. You can have a discussion about why what each of you is thinking is great or not. So inviting challenges, or this is what I would say, tell me why I'm wrong. I want to think it through. Tell me the weakness in my argument. Those are the kinds of things. Debrief those experiences. Why did the client act that way? Read and discuss an article or a chapter in a book or a whole book or something. Read it together, and then read it and then come together to talk about it. At the very worst, if you come in and you haven't seen each other for a while, you could say, since we last met, this was the best thing that happened to me. This was my high point, and this was the worst. You tell me your high and your low. That gives us 4 things we can talk about. So you're never, there's never a shortage of things to talk about, but you want to be able to communicate in a way that allows you to teach at the same and learn at the same time, even if what you're learning is how the mentee is approaching a problem. Okay, and there are many, many others, but I threw those up. And I've already said, I hope you enjoy it, because the more you enjoy it, the more you find it fulfilling, the more you'll want to do it. And by the way, it's also a wonderful way to create the next generation of mentors. People who have good mentoring experiences tend to be good mentors themselves and to mentor many other people along the way of their career. Some good mentoring habits is, as I said earlier, be aware that you're in a mentoring relationship and that people may be looking to you, anybody you supervise, but really as a role model. Remember, people may be observing you and thinking of you as a role model, whether they're in a relationship or whether they know you or not. Are you a good role model or not? You want to keep that focus on learning, learn about them, learn how they think, learn how they see you, how they think you think, what's going on here? Recognizing when there's an opportunity to teach and let them know something that would help them in terms of their development. Be responsive when they approach you, when they call back, respond. If you're busy, say, I can't talk now, or I can't respond. I know you called me yesterday. I'm sorry, this is a terrible time. Can we make an appointment for, next Wednesday? Or can you call me after Tuesday if it's not an emergency? To let them know you're at least there. You haven't kind of forgotten about them or are ignoring them. And recognize, that I hope that they are letting you know that they're appreciative, because being a mentor is really an act of generosity. I treat it that way. And it's important for them to recognize that you are giving them your time, your valuable insights, and your wisdom. And I think most people recognize that, certainly as time goes by. For feedback, you put this up here because a lot of times I've mentioned giving people feedback on how they performed. I observed you, or you did this assignment for me, and this is what I want you to know about it. I want you to think in a little bit different way, because either way, whether you're telling them, this is what I observed and this is what you did that needs improvement, it's still a judgment. It's still going backwards. They can't change it. It's done. Right? This is what I'm seeing, but it's already in the past. You want to be very specific. You want to do it as soon as possible after the event. And you want to be honest, but you want to also not be brutal. You want to be, tactful about how you say it. But the way you can do it in a way that focuses on their development and what they actually learned, instead of their feeling defensive, is by focusing on the future and saying, okay, I realize, that's in the past, but this situation could come up again. And, you could have this kind of interaction with a difficult client anytime. It happens to all of us. What are you going to do the next time? How would you do it differently? because I think you could do it differently. What are some of your ideas for how you might be able to do it? Right? And to get them thinking so that the focus is feeding it forward into the future so they don't repeat the mistake. And they understand specifically what it is that's different. Instead of saying to somebody, great job on that assignment, it's a much better piece of feedback to say, it was terrific. The way you really let the client know you were listening, you were making eye contact, you were leaning forward, you ask follow-up questions, you let the client know you really understood the points they were making. That's great. Then they know what you mean and what they could keep doing because it's effective. If you say, did you notice the client wasn't listening to you or was pulling back? Do you understand why? Do you realize that while the client was talking, you had your head down the whole time and you were just writing? The client doesn't know you're listening. You need to be giving the client more eye contact, or at least saying something to follow up so that they know that you're listening, or say to them, I'm taking notes, but I'm listening. If you want me to stop, I'll do that. Something that lets them know. Then they know the specific thing that could be done better the next time. Okay? Few obstacles. I want to just go through these. We've already talked about some of those. The reason for this picture is I want to emphasize that when you're a mentor, your job is not to clone yourself. It's not to reproduce a bunch of the same you. Your job is to but to help somebody become the best lawyer they can be. So sometimes time, as I said, nobody has time. You want to make it more efficient, more focused, have a plan, have an agenda when you get together, have it on the calendar so you know when you're going to meet. If the expectations are unclear, they expect too much of you, or they think you expect too much of them, talk about it. Say, you're expecting me to give you advice about something I don't know about, or you're expecting me to give you advice about your personal life. That's not what I'm here for. That deals with crossing boundaries as well. Sometimes they want, an associate has a lot of issues, and you're really not the right person. You don't care about it. You don't know about it. You don't have the patience to deal with these things. One thing you can do is to say, look, this is important to you, but I am just not the right person to help you. Have you thought about, going and go to this person? If you don't know them, I'll introduce you. They probably could help you much better than I ever could. Okay, so you don't have to be everything to everybody. And if the expectations are unclear, clarify them. You're there to talk to each other, make that clear. When you don't, interpersonal differences, sometimes there really is a clash, and it goes also with the compatibility. You don't have to be best friends. This is not about friendship. The best relationships often develop into friendships as well. But this is about work and being a professional. And if that is, if somebody doesn't have the same values about work, doesn't treat clients respectfully, and doesn't seem to learn as you go along, sometimes it's better to say, look, I don't think I'm the best mentor for you. I am not getting through to you about the things that mean the most to me. And we have those differences. It's okay. Somebody else might be able to help you better than I can. Or it's the sort of conversation every good supervisor needs to have, and most of us avoid, which is, you're not performing the way we expect you to in this firm. The differences here go beyond simply what's happening in the mentoring relationship. And sometimes those conversations have to be had when it's a mentor. Sometimes it's easier because they trust you and they'll listen. Sometimes it's worse because they feel betrayed. But being as honest as you can, about it and explaining in, specifically what the issues are, can get past it. And sometimes it really is a matter of just the personalities are simply not compatible. And then you just need to move on and encourage, to encourage each of you really to find somebody else. Sometimes though, it's a disagreement over style, over content, over advice or something. And again, don't write that off. Is this a valid disagreement? If you tell me the best way to win clients and get to know clients is to play golf, and I say, I've got young children at home and my husband or my wife works all the time. I can't spend 6 hours on the golf course. It isn't going to work for me. Instead of saying, well, you'll never find clients, both of you, this is where a dialogue is valuable. You may disagree about it, but you can also learn from each other. Maybe there are new ways. Maybe we can talk about, how would you do it? Well, I use social media. What do you mean social media? You can't get to know somebody on social media, but I do. That's how I think I could make a name for myself and win clients. Well, tell me about that. So use the disagreement to learn, not to get defensive or angry. And if there's a disagreement over values and, issues that are critical to being a lawyer, then, you may have to take the conversation in a different direction, as I said earlier. And sometimes it's a matter of people outgrowing the relationship. You've already done what you set out to do, and so that's going to be the end of it. You can still stay in touch. You can help each other. You can meet from time to time, but the more formal learning part may come to a natural end, or you may say, I think it's time, that you moved on and found somebody to help you in another area. I've helped you. I hope it's been valuable. So there are a lot of different ways of bringing this to a conclusion. There are some obstacles that are not common. Those were common obstacles. The coronavirus is not a common obstacle, at least I hope it isn't, and we don't see it again once we finally get rid of it. But it has led to virtual mentoring being sort of the dominant form. And so these are just some tips to make virtual mentoring more effective, staying connected, recognizing you may need to have more structure, setting up a time because you have to set up the meeting, whether it's on Zoom or on phone or whatever. The fact that you have a screen, the fact you can see each other sometimes is really helpful. You get to know somebody better because you see their children and their dogs and their bedroom and, wherever what their personal lives look like, and they see yours. Sometimes it's too much and you may want to, use the telephone. That's okay. People get exhausted with Zoom fatigue and all that. But being empathetic, letting the other person know we're all having a hard time. I realize you're suffering. You can talk about the challenges and talk about your own challenges. This isn't something limited to any particular group. Everybody has had to adapt. Everybody has had to adjust. But it's really important for somebody, especially somebody very young in the profession, but almost everybody, feels a need that somebody sees them and hears them. Somebody is willing to help, even if helping is just listening and just talking about something to make it lighter, something to reassure me. And the older you are, the more kind of challenges you've had in your life, you can say, look, I know how terrible this feels, but we will get through this. We're all dealing with it. What's the best thing you've learned about yourself during this that could help you in the future, could help in your career? And then what I've learned is that I really need a structure, and I've had to give myself more structure. What have you learned? Things like that. So the fact that you're not in the same place sometimes is helpful in a way, and at any rate is something that all of us can do much more effectively in some cases when we're not in the same place. I want to go quickly through this, but excuse me, as I told you, a lot of the work I do is on leadership development and on retirement planning, really succession planning and moving out. There are a lot of reasons that lawyers who are beyond their youth and young years in practice also need mentors. Sometimes it's for leadership development. A mentor is helpful anytime you're in a new role. If you have a new job, a new leadership role, you're in charge of a committee, you're in charge of something new, a new stage in your life, you now have children at home or a new family, or you have other demands on your time, family demands, personal demands. You want to have a personal life and you can't get out there. All of these things are experiences, if they're new to you, having somebody who's already lived through it and has some experience can be enormously helpful and satisfying. Certainly for leadership development, mentoring is critically important. And a lot of lawyers reach the point where they think that they have to stop asking for help. When in fact, I mean, like I say, I'm dealing with lawyers, some of them in their 70s, and they need help because retirement is a huge adjustment. It's one of the most challenging transitions of your life. And without any help at all, without any support, it can be traumatizing. And lawyers don't realize that. And so having somebody to help them go through that can be incredibly helpful. And it's really an important and valuable thing. So at any age, you can benefit from having someone help you. For some people, it might be about a specific situation where you know, for example, business development, trial skills, any kind of anything you would like to improve in terms of your performance as a professional. For succession planning, having mentors who can help you prepare your practice so that when you leave, you're leaving behind clients who are well taken care of, and a practice, if it's your own practice, where people are able to function. We all think we're indispensable. Most lawyers feel that we're the only lawyer our clients could possibly have. They trust us to do everything, and without us, nobody will be able to serve their interests. But at some point, all of us are going to leave one way or another. Sometimes our clients leave before we do. They retire, or there are mergers and the clients change. You want to make sure that the people that you work with are fully prepared to take over and to step in when you're ready to step out. And you want to groom your successors, and that involves mentoring. It involves transferring what you know. That takes a long time. This is not something that occurs overnight. It's not an event. And it's making sure that if you're the owner or the leader in a practice, the people behind you who are coming up see that they have a future, that you're not blocking them, and that you are helping them prepare for the leadership roles that will need to be filled, for the client relationship roles that need to be filled. And so dealing with the unknowns, I said, the first time you're have a major leadership role or run a major committee, it's unknown, but you're always on the way up. You're kind of, climbing a ladder. When you're talking about retirement planning, you're stepping off the ladder and stepping into what? That's very scary when you don't have a what to step into. And so that's why the retirement piece is important, because it's much easier to leave when you're looking forward to doing something. And to do that, you have to actually plan for the future. And having a group of advisors to help you, because you're going to need your network for new purposes, to explore possible futures for yourself, to stay connected so that if you know what you want to do, you'll be able to reach out to people who might be able to help you, and to explore new possibilities. And so having some of those advisors what you want is that some of those advisors are people who have already retired and who understand what you're going through and who can help you and talk to you about what they did that worked for them and what you need to watch out for, or what you could do to help you. So mentors, even at your most senior time in your career, can be really important. And I think, yes, and of course, building your legacy is also an important part of this, because when you leave, you want to make sure, whoops, before we get there, that your practice is thriving, that your reputation is secure, that you have taught and brought along the next generation, and helping them understand what they can do and live up to their aspirations. And of course, that you're contributing as a member of the profession to the continuation and the overall health and well-being of the legal profession. So a lot of reasons that it's worthwhile to be a mentor in order to build your legacy, as well as to leave the practice and the clients well taken care of when you see them, behind you. I'm going to talk about retirement, mentoring programs briefly, but Ružica, I know we may have some questions, and why don't I one or two?
Yeah,
and then we'll save the rest.
I'll shorten the question. So the first one would be, what kind of qualities or characteristics do mentors look for in potential mentees most often? What would make them not to want to mentor someone or stop mentoring the mentee?
What they look for is, first of all, the easiest thing is somebody like them. So we need to kind of get past that. You're always going to look for somebody who reminds you of yourself when you were young, because you're excited. You see yourself in them. You see the future being, becoming as brilliant as lawyer as you are. But more than that, what you really ought to be looking for is somebody who's eager to learn. You're making an investment. You're investing your time, your knowledge, your energy, and you want somebody who lets you see. They can tell you, I really, I like what you're doing. I want to be a lawyer like you. I want to represent these kinds of clients. They know what they want. They may not be clear. I'm not saying they know I want to be, I want to do this kind of law with these clients. That is something gradually they'll come to see. You can help them with that. But there has to be an underlying eagerness to learn. There has to be a feeling of engagement. If you feel that you're making a lot of effort and you're never hearing back, you don't know if they're paying, if they're listening to your advice or not. Or you hear it from other people, but they never thank you. They never let you know they appreciate what you're doing, or whether they disagree with you and come back and say, I disagreed. I tried to do it your way and it was terrible. Or I didn't do it your way. I did it this way because it felt more comfortable and it worked, or it didn't work, but they're being open with you. They're in a relationship. And it's like with any relationship, if you feel that you're not getting anything out of it, not even a sense of appreciation, why bother? And you're going to feel that you're not getting anything, you're going to pull away.
Okay, and then from the other side, what is the worst conventional mistake a mentor can make? Can you provide an example? And what would be the best approach of a mentee, or any inspiring example again?
Well, the best approach for a mentee is what I just said. To make sure that the mentor knows you're there, not because you want them to do everything for you, but because you admire them and you can learn from them and you want to be successful. You don't know what that success could look like when you're very young. Maybe later, if you want them because you're somebody looking for someone to help you with a new leadership role, or you want to move up into a different managerial level or something like that. You may be more specific and say, that's what I would like. The more focused and specific you can be, the easier it is for a mentor to say, yes, I can help you, or no, I don't have the time, or I'm not the person.
Yeah, but what would be the worst mistake a mentor can make?
Expecting a mentee to think like you.
Okay.
Expecting them to be just like you.
Okay.
Because you want them, as I said earlier, you're not there to clone them or to solve their problems. You're there so that you help them develop into an independent thinking, competent and successful lawyer. But they're going to have to do it on their own terms.
Sure.
So trying to control them, trying to, just lock them into the way your vision is for them is a mistake.
Okay, thanks. So I suggest we continue with the slides because we have about 10 minutes left, so we stick to the time.
And this is, I'm going to go through this quickly because it's about programs. And as I said, in the United States, we started programs in law firms in probably on a large scale in the late 90s. When I wrote The Lawyer's Guide to Mentoring, I think it came out in 1999 or 2000. And that was just around the time firms were beginning to put in programs. And they did it because they realized it was important to have a mentor. And with so many lawyers being recruited into more offices, firms wanted to make sure everybody had at least one person in the firm who they could talk to about their career, about just how do you do things around here. And so we started seeing more formal programs where people were matched up. Usually they were just like a buddy, somebody you could go to and say, where do I go to get something done? Then gradually they became much more formal and more sophisticated and took on many more roles and nuances, really. So the program basically is something with guidelines. I'll go into it in a second. And you can find them, most corporations have some sort of mentoring program, even if it's just a rudimentary one. Many law firms do, many professional associations. Actually, this is sort of the agenda for what I'm going to talk about, so let me just go through it. There are so many different kinds of programs. Some, like I said, are buddy programs. Some deal with sponsorship. Some are the reverse mentoring programs I talked about. It depends on the sponsoring host organization and the people involved. But most of these organizations do have programs. In the United States, we have 50 states plus some territories plus federal programs, and I'd say about half the states have their own. The state bars in each state have their own programs. Some of them are very sophisticated. I think about 6 or 7 of them are mandatory, which means in order for a new lawyer to be licensed, you have to participate usually for a year in the state-run mentoring program. They find a mentor for you, and they might have a curriculum, they might have something very loose, but you participate in that program. At the other extreme, 1 or 2 state bar-run programs have a matching service. And if I'm a young lawyer and I have a slip and fall case and I've never handled it, I can go and say that's where somebody just has an accident, trips down the stairs in a public place and wants to sue. I can go online to the state bar and I can look for somebody who has volunteered to help me on a one-time basis deal with a case like that. So they, both are called mentoring programs. Many law schools have mentoring programs where they match alumni with students to help with some of the things we talked about in career planning in our last sessions. In specialty bars, women's bar associations, or intellectual property bar associations, real estate bar associations, different specialties have their own mentoring programs. Then there are some programs that are open to the public. Some of them are, you can Google, mentoring online and public or something, and you will get programs that will allow you to register as a mentor or a mentee, and you put in the subjects that interest you, and automatically you were posted, and if somebody if you're looking for a mentor who helps me with slip and fall cases or something, it's like that state bar program. I can look at your resume or what it has about you. And if I want your help, I contact you, I reach out to you and say, I'd like you to mentor me in this program. Sometimes there are websites that just match you at random. Some are, when I say sponsored, some are private companies that provide mentoring programs, and a business, a corporation or a law firm can send, they pay the company and they can send 1 or 2 or 20 of their employees to that program, and the company will, the sponsor will find a mentor for you in the same field. And you work in their program, but the companies pay the sponsor to do the matching and run the program. There are also, mostly in avatars, when I say avatars, mostly this is in coaching, but I believe there are some mentoring programs that are now, the last I saw they were in beta, they may be live now, that match you. They will find you a mentor, but it's an avatar and it's run by artificial intelligence. And I don't know, a lot of people have relationships, mentoring relationships happily with their avatars. So, basically what this is to say is, one way or another, there are mentors to be found out there. And if you want to be a mentor, all you have to do, you can go to a program, but you can also simply reach out to somebody who could benefit, who you think might be able to benefit from your help, and just offer to help them. You don't have to say, I want to be your mentor. You can say, I see a lot of promise in you. And I think your skills, your negotiation skills might be better. Would you like my help? And if they say yes, then to work with them. So it's not hard to find someone to mentor. Finding a mentor. I don't know why this is doing this. There we go. The reasons.
Ida, I'm sorry to interrupt you. It's 8 p.m. and we promise the participants will end by that. I know we have some more slides, and I would like all the people who want to see them to stay with us. But for the people who need to leave, we'll just now state the poll here just to rate the webinar. And then all the participants who still can stay with us, I suggest them to stay to complete the webinar. And for the people who need to leave, thank you for joining us.
Yes, okay. Thank you. And I'm sorry to go over there. It's only another 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah, I'm sure, but then we have some more questions. Yeah,
absolutely.
Sorry.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And I'll stay and answer questions as long as you want. So.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we are done with the poll. Better I may remove it.
Okay, shall I continue then?
Yep, thank you.
All right. In terms of the reasons for programs, I've mentioned them. A lot of programs are there for onboarding new hires. As I said earlier, that's more of a buddy program. All of these things I've actually talked about, so I'm not going to go over them. What I want to mention is if you wanted to start a program, some of the things that are critical to doing that. And the most important thing is understanding why the program is there, why a mentoring program will address the particular need you want to address or the particular problem. Sometimes it's not about mentoring. Mentoring is sort of the catch-all for a deeper problem. Mentoring can do some things, but not everything. And so what are the objectives for the program? You also, without clear objectives, there's no way you can measure whether you're successful or not. So at the end of the program, usually, whether you're evaluating it at 6 months, 3 months, a year, 2 years, in order to evaluate it, you have to evaluate it against your original objectives, which is why another reason you have to have them. Within the program, though, there may be program objectives where you say, we want everybody to feel that they have a sense of belonging to the firm, that they are part of the community in the firm. That may be for the overall program objective. Within the relationship, though, because there are going to be two of us matched, or maybe a small group, within the mentoring participants, those in that particular pair or group, there may be specific objectives that they want to achieve within the broader objective. And so you want to also allow them the freedom to do that so that they can also measure the success of their personal participation in the program. And then who are you going to open the program to, both in terms of mentors and the mentees? Who do you want to help? Who are the right people you have available to help them? It has to be voluntary on the mentor's part. It really needs to be voluntary on both parts to make the relationship work well. And how are you going to match them? On what basis? There are a lot of criteria you could use. Some people use personality tests. Some people ask for specific goals. What is it you want to achieve with a mentor? And ask the mentor, what are the things I can help somebody with? And then you match them based on where the needs and the skills match, right? What I'm offering is a good match for what you need. And so that's how we get matched. Usually in a relationship that works best because we know that we can match up and have something productive there. And then you need some guidelines so people know what they're supposed to do. What do you expect of them in the program? Sometimes they can be, depending on the organization, they may be very broad or they may be very specific in terms of how often do you meet, how long will the relationship last, do you have to have something concrete, you know, a lot of things like that. And then oversight, somebody has to run it. If it's a program, it's there because things aren't happening that you want to happen naturally. And that means they won't happen unless somebody is running it. And so who is that going to be? And what kind of responsibilities will they have? And are they going to be able to do it and willing? And then lastly, I just wanted to mention technology because there are many ways that technology can support these programs, either by matching people up, by providing training programs, training in mentoring specifically, or training that you can post on legal topics or other relevant topics for your particular audience. They will monitor programs, or you can. Sometimes they do it automatically and they have people who do it for you. Sometimes the administrator in the organization, in the firm or the company will be the one monitoring, but they use the technology to help them. And there are some companies out there who do it all for you. So all of these are ways that technology makes it easier, and that's not even counting Zoom and the other technologies we use for communicating in the individual relationships. So with that, I think we're done. And I've posted here just some resources, and they can be made available to you afterwards. But these are resources about the things that I've talked about that I hope would be helpful to you. And so we're a little bit over, and that's the conclusion of my comments, but I'm happy, as I said, to continue taking questions.
Okay, thanks a lot, Ida. I'll again group the questions. So the first one is very short. Is the peer mentoring similar concept to mastermind concept?
It can be. It can be. Usually group mentoring is, because it's mastermind usually has somebody who's an expert leading the group and serving as a mentor. So that's more group mentoring, but yes, it's similar.
Okay, then one more question. In case a mentor is very dissatisfied with some aspects of the, say, judiciary in his or her country, shall he or she share that impression with his or her mentee? So,
well, it's hard. First of all, I can't answer it directly. I can give you just generally as a mentor, whether you are a member of the judiciary or a member of the firm, what are your fiduciary obligations to the organization? There are some things that you can't disclose, or as a matter of discretion, shouldn't disclose. So that may be a factor in, in your decision about what to say. To say that there are things you're not satisfied with is a pretty general statement, especially if you're saying it not just to complain, but to say, how can we do it better? I'm trying to make improvements. Do you have any ideas about what we can do to improve it? Something like that could be very helpful. But this, all of this goes into a matter of judgment as well, and what legally, professionally, ethically, you can disclose. If you are going to talk about a particular judge, maybe not so smart, I don't know. Some situations I can see where you might, but many where I think it's not very smart, unless you trust this mentee explicitly to maintain that confidence and you feel that it's something you can say. Sometimes when the mentee comes to you, I see this mostly in a firm or a company, someone comes and says, I've been working with this partner or this manager. I think they have a drug problem. Or I think they're so abusive that I can't work with them anymore. And the mentee brings it up. You have to be very circumspect. First of all, you have an obligation there to investigate that or to look into it. And what I would do is say to the mentee, is this something you feel you can address directly? If not, I may have an obligation. Certainly if it's a drug problem or an abuse problem, I would feel as a member of this organization that I have to bring that to the attention of my partners. So but I want you to know that because I don't want you to feel that I'm betraying your confidence. So let's talk about how we can do this best. Because sometimes they'll come to you and they'll say, I don't want you to tell anybody, but this is what's happening. And sometimes you're in a bind because you really have to. You can't, if somebody potentially has a drug problem, it needs to be addressed. You can't risk your firm and your clients' interest by not addressing it.
Okay, thank you.
But you don't want to put the associate in an embarrassing situation if it turns out not to be the case.
Sure. So one more inquiry is that to see the resources again, the slide with the resources, the books and resources.
Yeah.
Okay, and then final question. And then I guess we're all done. Although it was very resourceful, anyways. So mentoring takes time, takes energy, takes competence and patience. How can we measure the return on mentoring investment?
We've been trying to do this forever. You can't measure it the way you can a financial contribution. You can measure it against your objectives. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons I say that is a lot of firms have mentoring programs so that they can increase the rate of retention. They keep more people and they reduce the number of lawyers who leave. Because we know that when people have tight connections, relationships with people in the firm, and they are happy there, they stay longer. The trouble is there are a lot of reasons that people stay and leave. And so you can't do a direct correlation. What you can look at is trends. If you start a program and a year or 2 years later, you're seeing evaluations come back from the associates saying that they're happy with the program and they like their mentors and they're getting better work, and you have a decline in the number of people leaving, it looks like there's some sort of correlation. But very often, most of it is seen in satisfaction, on both parts. and the outcome of the kind of lawyers that you're producing and the kind of success in the firm. But, as I say, I think some of the consulting companies, like it may have been Deloitte maybe, or Pricewaterhouse, some of them have actually written books on ROIs in mentoring, but it's really, really, really expensive to do the kind of scientific work that's involved. And most people don't have the resources. Mentoring programs are not that expensive to put on. They are in terms of lost time if people are taking billable hours, and they're devoting them to non-billable activities.
Yeah.
But, but for the most part, you're looking at very difficult things to measure in a scientific or a statistically accurate way.
So we should rely on qualitative measures, I guess. Yeah.
For the most part, you can ask if people are doing things differently. I mean, you can ask for higher levels of evaluation, but in terms of a monetary return, you can do it if you're having higher retention and lower attrition. There are ways you can measure that, because the cost of recruiting new talent, the cost of losing talent, all of that is quantifiable. So yes, you can do that. The issue is, how much of that is attributable just to a mentoring program, or just to mentoring.
Dear Ida, we could talk for another few hours, I guess, but on behalf of the audience and all the organizers, I would like to thank you for another insightful webinar. We'll be in touch, we'll produce a publication, send it to our participants. And dear participants, thank you for being that long with us tonight. Wishing you a good night and lots of success with your mentoring initiatives.
Oh, well, success to yours. I wish you all success with your initiatives and your efforts.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone. Have a good night. Thank you for your feedback as well, the audience. Okay. Ja još čitam poruke. So much information and so on. Yep. Okay, ma'am. Jeste žive? Vi ste svi mutani.
A ja sam removala sve ljude, ove koji nisu sami ošli.
Da, vidim da su sad brže odlazili.
Mene bole kukovi noge i ostalo je okej.
Dobro. Ja sam već bila strgana, htjela sam zaokružiti, pa da.
Ali baš je nevjerojatno koliko je na kraju strpljiva i onako sa smiješkom odgovara na ta pitanja.
Samo da zaustavit ću snimanje.
Stvarno je sjajna žena, super.
Ja isto mislim.